Okay, welcome back, and now we're going to introduce definition 1, which is all about the definition of what an absolute maximum is, absolute minimum, and then the nomenclature or the vocabulary that when we talk about an absolute extremum. Okay, so let me read the definition. So again, you might want to pause, write this down in your notes. So definition 1 is: let f be a function defined over an interval I, and let c be an element of I. So that's what this means, an element of I. Okay? We say f has an absolute maximum on I at c if f of c is greater than or equal to f of x for all x in I. Okay? Or for all x that is an element of I, if you want to say it that way. We say f has an absolute minimum on I at c if f of c is less than or equal to f of x for all x that are elements of I. Okay, again, that's the definition of absolute maximum and absolute minimum. Now, if f has an absolute maximum on I at c or an absolute minimum on I at c, we say that f has an absolute extremum on I at c. So when we use the term absolute extremum, it could be an absolute minimum or could be an absolute maximum. We're just saying, hey, there's an extreme value on the interval I at c. Okay? Now, a couple of things to say before we move on. When we use the term absolute here, we're not talking about absolute value. Okay? Okay, so other than when we were talking about absolute error, right? Absolute error inferred that there was an absolute value. In this case, when we use the word absolute, we're not using it in the way that we're talking about absolute value. This means that it's the lowest point over the entire domain of the function. Okay? So sometimes these are called global minimum or global maximum. So absolute means that, hey, if we took the entire domain of the function, this is the absolute minimum over the interval. Okay? Or over the interval I. Okay? But just realize that absolute minimum could be negative, it could be positive, it could be zero. Okay? The other thing is, when we talk about the absolute maximum or minimum, remember that that's the value of the function at c. That's the maximum or minimum, right? It's f of c, right? F of c is the absolute minimum or maximum. Okay, it's not c. C is just the x value on the domain where the maximum or minimum occurs, or where the extremum occurs. Okay, so make sure you understand that. So if you're asked to find the maximum, the absolute maximum or the absolute minimum, you're looking for a y value, right? You're finding f of c, not c itself. Okay, so for example, in the case of the function f of x equals x squared plus 1, so this has an extreme minimum at x equals 0, right? But this is not the extreme value. That's not the absolute minimum. You would not write this down as the absolute minimum, right? So this is where it occurs at in the domain. But the absolute minimum in this case would be the value of the function at x equals 0, which is 1. So f of c, so f of 1 in this case would be, or excuse me, f of 0 would be 1. So the absolute minimum in this case is 1, okay, not 0. Okay, so just be careful of that. Okay, other than that, see you next time.